Okay, welcome everybody to another episode of Antonio Talks. We don't know, we're actually having a bit of an identity crisis here because the name of this podcast changes every week, from the future of work to Antonio Talks to the Antonio Talks talk show. Whatever it is a podcast, and we're talking about things and getting and setting the world to rights around the future of work, employability, technology, pretty much anything that we find interesting. So, and I say we, it's me and my alter egos, I find interesting. Hello, I have a great guest with me today who's actually a fantastic guest. I've had him on a few podcasts in previous forms and worked closely with this person for a number of years before he went on to go and dominate the world of graduate employability. I suppose that would be the term I could put you under. But this is my guest today, and it's a special guest, Neil Ewington, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to give you a clap, and I'm going to put some effects to that as well.
A big round of applause, a big cheer beforehand, yeah?
Neil, one thing to just mention quickly, if you change the layout and you put it to spotlight, we can just look at each other.
Oh, that's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. Right, how do I change the layout? Bottom right?
3 dots at the bottom there.
Yeah, I got you.
And then put it to spotlight.
Oh,
I'll change layout.
There we go. Spotlight. Perfect. There we go.
Awesome. Neil, introduce yourself to the world. Introduce yourself to the people on this call.
Well, thank you. That was a really, really kind intro. Like Antonio said, we've worked together in the past, and I've been on these sort of things, various different forms over the last few years. But I do 2 things. But mostly what I'm doing is supporting students across the UK from the age of around 14 up until around 25. And I do that in 2 different ways. So I work with one business called Your Game Plan. What Your Game Plan does is go into schools across the UK, do things like financial literacy training, mental health and wellbeing training, digital literacy training, and support and give guidance and clarity to students on what it's like to work in different industries and what their future can hold, and essentially their careers. And we're working with about 1,000 schools, just over 1,000 schools in the UK, 20% of all the secondary schools in the UK at the moment, doing that sort of good work. And then we work with businesses to help them engage with those students and those schools. And I've got some stats around where that sort of influence comes from that I'll share as we go through. Now, the other thing I do is I run a business called the Early Career Academy, and it's the same sort of thing, but I'm supporting students a little bit later on in their development. So at the graduate stage, so people who are looking for, again, guidance, clarity on their careers when it comes to university age and their early careers a little bit further down the line. And we do that in more of a one-to-one coaching perspective. We've supported from Your Game Plan, I think it's over 20,000 students already, from the ECA individually, over 500 students. So that's what I basically do. I speak to businesses, teachers, and students to try and support them in terms of their career, what to do, what not to do, and try and give people a bit of clarity in the UK.
What motivates you about what you're doing? You seem quite a passionate person, Neil. Why are you so motivated around students, graduates into work versus professionals into work?
Yeah, I'll give you an example. So I was hosting an event last year called the Graduate Job Hunt. And the idea was we got on some big brands, some great brands. Ernst Young were there, ASOS were there, BT were there, BAE Systems, all gave up their time for free for an hour to speak to students about what's a career actually like in these different industries, in professional services, in engineering. And I thought, what the easy bit of hosting this event is going to be? One of the easy bits is going to be getting the universities to send this free event to their students with 7 of the largest brands in the world that are going to be attending. And that was the hardest bit. I rang up the top 50 universities, the top 50 on the list that I had, universities in the UK, saying, look, we've got this free event for students. They're going to love it. It talks about the different industries. One of the things that none of us have ever sat down when we're younger and told about, we never sat down and said, this is what a career in tech's going to be like, or engineering or entrepreneurship. And only 2 of them answered the phone. And so there was all these careers teams that were working at these universities, and I was emailing them, I was trying to call them. So I went back and I pretended to be a student, and I asked the question, I'm a student at X university. I've got an interview next week. Please, can I go through to the careers team? Same answer. Only 3 of them out of the 50 that I called actually picked up the phone or put me through to someone, or it was an email address, or, come back to us later. So that really frustrated me from the graduate perspective, because, there's people who are supposedly supposed to be the careers advisors across the UK. And some of them were very, very good. I don't want to brandish everyone with a terrible brush here, but that lack of support is why people have a real lack of clarity on what they can do in the future. Now, talking about the younger side of things, why I'm passionate about that is I feel the same way that a lot of students do now. Like, well, I don't know what I want to do when I'm older. And that's a problem that's relatively easy to solve. But part of the issue and challenge around that is schools don't have the time, the money, the inclination to be doing that. They've got to make sure that they're hitting something called the Gatsby requirements, which is certain things that you need to hit as a school to continue to get funding, and what schools are rated against. They would love to be doing things like career advisory more than they are, but they aren't. And I think that, I don't know about you, Antonio, but when I was that age, there was really no support for what you want to do when you're older. And it's one of the most common questions you get asked, right? What do you want to be when you're older? And you go, I don't know. No one's told me anything about what jobs are like.
I've got a story for you on that, Neil. So I failed my GCSEs. I remember the GCSE day when I was 16, or I don't know. No, actually, I must have been. I don't even know how old I was. I can't remember, but 15 or 16, because it must have been just before my 16th birthday, or was I 16? I don't know. Anyway, I remember the day, and got the bus up to school, and everyone's there, like all my mates, who my immediate mates. They're there. They've got all the grades to get into sixth form, yeah, and they're absolutely loving life. They're having, they're like, great. I look at my grades, and I'm like, oh shit, I got literally failed everything, D's and E's. Not even D's and E's, probably D's, E's and F's, maybe a couple of D's, but easy.
Just don't do it. It's too early on in the podcast.
I can see your mind. Stop it now. Maybe a couple of E's, E's, D's, E's and F's. Anyway, I failed most. I got 2 B's though, and one was in drama, which doesn't surprise you. I'm a drama queen. And the other one was in RE, religious education. I'm quite philosophical, aren't I? Some call me a guru, actually, Neil. Yeah. It's me. I call myself a guru.
You call yourself a guru, yeah.
Anyway, everyone's loving life, and then one of the teachers comes up to me and is like, "Oh shit!" No, I didn't say, "Oh shit." Oh God, you're so close on the business stuff as well. I actually got D's in business. They're like, "You're so close," you on business stuff. And then anyway, they said, look, you can go to a career counselor. You go to it wasn't a career counselor, just go to like some person who's in a room somewhere and have a chat with them. And this teacher was actually a teacher on a different thing, but they sort of moonlighted as someone who could support on, guiding people who failed and what they could do next. So I sat in there and they were like, well, you've got funky hair. Why don't you become a hairdresser? And I was like, all right then. I was like, okay, I'll do that. So I left. So because obviously you look up to these people, and they're the people you look up to, and they're saying, right, this is what you should do to go and progress a career or go and do a profession. And where I'm from, we didn't really have, I love my parents, they're fantastic, but they weren't really educated. We don't push education in sort of where I'm from, because it just wasn't something that the family did. So anyway, I went and did that. So I went and applied for an apprenticeship at Tony and Guy, got it. I worked in Tony and Guy for 2 years, but I realized actually I don't want to be in this. So I went back to study music, and I blagged my way into the course. I said I had the grades, got the interview. They're like, you don't have the grades. I was like, I know, but listen to this song. Anyway, I didn't say it in that way. I said, look, I've worked, my ass off for 2 years, and I've realized that education is really important. It's a gateway, blah, 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 blah. Sold my way into it, and they gave me an unconditional offer. But that being said, that's not my point. The point I'm trying to make is that, I have a prime experience of what you're talking about, that, there's not really anything that supports students to go and progress further. And why is that? Why? Because obviously school is a gateway to a university, as well as a gateway to a profession, right? So why is it that these schools and universities aren't taking it seriously when it comes to guiding people on what their career should be?
Well, the schools, I think, have more of an excuse here. And it is an excuse, really, is that they don't have the time. They don't have the time or funding. They are judged against metrics that have nothing to do with helping kids understand what their future should look like or what it's like to work in engineering. They're focused on getting the grades, right? Getting them into a university. So then that blame is handed over to university, right? Well, okay, it's your responsibility to teach the children and the students what they should be doing. But the students want to get the best grades as well for their students, right? So it's all about that there just being a lack of definition around. It's more about where people need to be in terms of their targets, right? You think about it like a salesperson, right? You've got £100,000 sales target. You're going to focus more on hitting that target than you are pretty much anything else in that role. It's the same thing for schools and universities. Their focus is on hitting their targets. So when it comes to some of those targets around the Gatsby requirements are about introducing children to the schools, but they're not into industries, but they're not the most important ones. And I speak to teachers all the time now at Your Game Plan, and there's actually 2 teachers who are on our staff at Your Game Plan. And it's not that they don't want to do it. It's just that they don't have the time or the funding to do it. And that's where like a business like Your Game Plan can come in, where and there are people who I think are trying to do it, but they're trying to charge the schools for it, right? And if one of the challenges is, well, there's no money, especially in schools that are in areas of the UK or areas of the world that definitely don't have extra funding, or in areas that typically wouldn't have support outside of school for these sort of things, then it does become very, very difficult. But I think it's more of a lack of resource and a lack of opportunity to actually do the teaching than it is a lack of will to do it. That's for the school side. I think from a university side, I really don't know the answer to that question. I really don't understand why there is a lack of that sort of career support. So, I heard a lot of excuses as I was doing this video about, COVID has been difficult for our phone lines. And I'm like, that doesn't help the students, does it? It seems a little bit excusey to me.
Well, I guarantee you, I mean, because I did end up in university studying music, Mickey Mouse course. I love the course, but obviously, I mean, I'm not using that education. But I guarantee you, no one probably in that university I was at had someone who goes, or a pathway to go, right, here's where you can get into career. I had no idea about consulting. If I did at that time, as soon as I'd left university, I'd applied to a consulting organization like a Deloitte or an Accenture or whatever, because that would have actually taken me on a really good career, faster. So I had no idea about what the possibilities were out there. Well, a question I have for you on this is, are you noticing that there is more emphasis on professional careers, if there is any? Obviously, we're talking as limited, but out of that limited emphasis, is there more emphasis for students to go into professional worlds, such as, tech or whatever it may be, rather than vocations such as like a plumber or electrician or something like that?
Yeah. I've actually got some stats around that. Can I share my screen, or should I just talk through the stats?
You could share your screen, but isn't that a good question? Validate my question, Neil.
It's a fantastic question. I'll get to you just now. I'll get to the answer in just a minute. But so let me just share my screen if I can. I haven't been on Google Meet for a while. So your entire screen, and then I'm going to have to do second screen. There we go. So if we look, just let me know when you can see that. Yeah. Okay. So let's just have a look here. So look, these are 2 of the most important things, and this applies not just to school but also to university as well. So let me just see if I can make this a little bit bigger so people can see who are watching. So I will talk through it all as well. Oh no, that's not worked, is it? Pause, reset, refresh. There we go. Perfect. So this is something that they were asked at school. So this is a presentation I did recently. I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago. So this first one on the left is they went to schools and they asked students, they could pick any one of these answers, right? That's why it doesn't add up to 100%. So they asked them, what are your influences when it comes to your career decisions or your decisions in general? 86% of that was parents. And that makes a lot of sense, right? 86% of your decisions come from parents. Teachers and career advisors was higher than I thought it would be. It really was. It's 70%. And then friends. And then at the end, we've got social media influencers. Thank God I'm a little bit upset that it's even 9%, to be honest. But this just shows where the influence comes from for students. And then to answer your question on the right-hand side, we've got the decisions around, so if we know that parents and teachers are the biggest influences, then we can see where that influence ends up. And that influence ends up with 76% of them wanting to go to university. So to answer your question, yes, there is a much, much larger percentage influence and push towards students going to university rather than doing an apprenticeship or going straight to a job.
So do you mind if I just pause on this bit? So what does that mean then? So what does that mean for the future of the workforce? Because if less people doing apprenticeships, sure, that means less people are doing vocations and less people are doing the jobs that are required. But obviously, it looks like we're gonna have a shortage then in future, right?
Well, absolutely. And it means two things. It means, firstly, absolutely, you're right. There is going to be a potential shortage around that. But I think more importantly than anything else, if you're going to be, it's going to make university degrees less and less effective. If you think even about 10, 15 years ago, having a degree was often an almost guarantee way of getting into a position. Even then, it was starting to become an issue, right? And now, I work with graduates and I work with students across the UK. And they're constantly talking about, I thought, I was told from the age of 14 years old that if I went and got a degree, then I'd be able to get a job easily, right? And it's just not the case anymore. But you can see it's parents and teachers, friends, obviously peer pressure. That's always going to be a thing, right? Are you going to uni? Well, I might as well, right? I don't want to be left out. Like you were talking about, your GCSE grades. You felt a little bit, well, all my friends got good grades. They're going to A-level and sixth form. I'm not. So you're always going to have a bit of that peer pressure. But if parents and teachers are always going to be sending people towards that university sort of route, then yeah, you're going to end up with a lot of people who have no idea why they've done that, because they've just been influenced to do that by their parents, not by their own decision, because they weren't making an informed decision, because there was no one there to support them and give them advice on this is what you could go do. And again, that's what I try and do at university and with students through your game plan. Here's what it's like to go work in engineering. Here's an opportunity. Let's get you in front of, let's do an event where you can speak directly to ASOS, BT and BAE systems, and they can tell you what it's like. And you might go, well, actually, I know my parents have said this one thing, but I'm probably going to do that. I'm probably going to be massively influenced by them anyway, but at least I have a little bit of information. I can go back and say, well, actually, I think I would like a career in this. I just heard BAE Systems talking about their engineering department. That sounds like something that's really interesting to me. And that's the only way you're going to kind of solve these issues, I think.
How do you scale that, given that there's no funding, there's no resource, and I guess from you, and I'm just speaking personal opinion, sometimes you could probably get a bit demoralized yourself, or demotivated because you're trying so hard to push this, but there's no funding, there's no this. So how does how does a government or a school or university solve that?
Yeah, so that's two things that I'm working on this year. And it is the bane of my life, to be honest. It was around the funding and that side of things. So firstly, really simply, you don't charge the schools anything, you charge the businesses. So we're actually hosting an event in March where we have like Sodexo are going to be there, McDonald are going to be there, B&Q are going to be there. B&Q obviously talking about retail and hospitality. We're going to have Smith & Williamson going to be there talking about tech. GSK is going to be there talking about tech, for example, and they're paying for the privilege to go and speak to the students. So that's how you can fund it, because if you start trying to get money from the teachers, from the schools, you're just not going to get anywhere. So that's one way of doing it, by getting the companies to engage with the students directly through, it doesn't have to be through your game plan or through ECA, but directly going and speaking to the students is one way to fix that problem in terms of where's the revenue going to come from. And the other side of it is just trying to educate from essentially trying to saturate the market with, look, this is the benefit that we can show, because a lot of what the government do is they will pay a lot of money to help with unemployment, right? But that's kind of trying to solve a problem after it's happened, which seems like the wrong way round to me. You should be trying to solve a problem before it's occurred. So how do you do that? Well, by creating an environment where it's easier for people to find local employers, easier for children and students to understand that they don't have to go to university, that an apprentice job could be just as fulfilling, could have just as good career prospects, and also helping students understand that there are like if you lined up 100 students at school and said, do you think you need a degree to be an accountant? They'd probably all say yes. But you don't. There's tons of accountancy firms, very well-known accounting firms with household names that have apprentice and school leaver programs where you can start at the age of 18. And it's about educating the students around that, and then going to the government and saying, look, rather than us paying all this money to help with unemployment, why don't you start paying money so that we can start solving the problem at its core base, so that the unemployment is lowered before it even becomes an issue. Which
what
then,
do you do then? Just to touch on that, what do you do about then the unemployed people? If we're taking 25% of that budget for unemployed, and then we're giving it to the school students, university students, or the organisation.
hello, are you still there?
Yeah, can you hear me? Hello.
Can anyone hear me, or is it my internet that's gone?
I can hear you.
Oh,
I can hear you, yeah.
let me switch it up.
Oh,
Here we go. One sec.
can anyone hear me?
Yes, we can
I
hear
can
you.
hear you, Neil. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so it's Antonio that's gone. Thanks, Meg.
There we go.
Oh, you're back.
Just switched to my 4G. I'm this Wi-Fi connection is terrible. How's that? Good?
That's actually better than it was, yeah.
Cool. Okay, so how do we then solve? So let's say, for instance, we're taking a bit of budget from the unemployment operations or initiatives, whatever it may be, and then we're giving that to the school leavers or students or graduates or people in schools in university at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean for the unemployed? Because then that means does that not just perpetuate unemployment?
Of course, yeah, no, it's a really good point. So what you need to do at first is have, and this is what I'm planning to do over the next couple of years, is pick a number of locations where we can showcase the benefits of it, right? So showcase off the back of what I'm going to be doing, showcase the benefits in a number of specific areas, and then you can ratio that against the outcome of unemployment versus the money that would be taken from the unemployment services to pay for it. And as long as that is either equal or less, then you're okay, right? If it ends up being more expensive, then it's a failed experiment, right? But the idea is to pick five places across the country that we think could benefit from this, try it there, and if it does work, brilliant. Then we can start expanding that. Otherwise, it needs to be looked at and experimented on first. But it's a very good question.
So is this something you're actively doing?
Yes.
Is that actively taking? So what's the logistics of that? I mean, that seems like a mammoth task.
I'm very busy. It is a mammoth task, and look, I'd like to say that a lot of this is with your game plan, and so the work I'm trying to do is trying to reform the university side of things. Your game plan, which is run by a fantastic human being called Danny Heath, who's the CEO there, who's this is his brainchild, right? And a lot of these ideas came from him. So it's tough to do, but a lot of what we're doing is doing this work with schools and students to try and help them gain clarity on their future, getting that funded obviously by commercial, from the commercial side, so they can help with their hiring, and then work on that on the other side of things. Off our own back, we're not asking for government funding from that at all. We're going to be paying for that, paying for these trials, so that we can see, is this going to help? Can we actually stop unemployment before it starts?
And where are the biggest opportunities for organizations who want to hire staff or hire graduates or school leavers? Where are the biggest opportunities in terms of industry and I suppose industry and vocations or professions?
Yeah, so that differs depending on which age group you're talking about. But if you're talking about school leavers, apprentices, school leaver programs, and you're looking at tech and engineering as the top two right now, at university, that becomes a little bit more muddled and pretty even across the board, to be honest. But again, obviously, tech is the largest growing. FinTech is a huge one as well. But FinTech's a good example of this, right? Try and sit down, try and explain FinTech to someone, to a teacher, to then have them explain that to their students is an incredibly complex and difficult thing to have to teach, every teacher across the UK. Whereas if we just get one business, to go in and talk about FinTech directly to the students and try and build a way of doing it where it is understandable from a very young age, then that is something that we can really affect and change.
High school students, sweaty high school students, do they care about their careers? If I'm fair,
Of course they do. You cared.
Yeah, I mean, not really. I mean, I didn't care until I had a bit of life experience in me where I went into, a vocation where I went into hairdressing, and I was like, you know what? I'm fucking sick of working Saturdays and Sundays.
But this is the point, right? You went into hairdressing because one random teacher told you it's a good idea. Well,
Yeah.
Imagine if you'd had on the event we're doing, we're actually taking over classrooms in March. Imagine you'd had a whole week where an hour a day, you'd have 5 of the largest companies in the UK from different industry talk to you about what their jobs are like, rather than just one teacher saying, well, why don't you be a hairdresser? That potentially completely changes your outlook and perspective. And that's where we see the difference.
And then, but then if we look at like, a career, I mean, your job has changed since massively since you left school, right?
Yeah. Talking about myself, I had no idea what I wanted to do.
Yeah, but the point is, I'm just playing the other side here. I'm just saying.
No, I appreciate it.
Schools, and you're going right. Okay, here's what I'm BAE Systems. Come and join us and become an aeronautical engineer or whatever. Do you know what I mean? They're like, yeah, that's really cool. But then they get into that career, and then they find out it's not for them. Then they're sort of stuck back to route one. So how do you know you're giving them the right advice? Because, like we said, we're young and impressionable, right?
Yeah. So that's where it becomes that's where it becomes important, not just to have one company talking to students about their industry. That's where it becomes important to get a number of different. So if you don't just want Barclays talking about what finance is like to work in, right? You want to have an accountancy firm. You want to have Barclays. You want to have different types of companies within those different fields. And realistically, my ultimate goal here is to go as granular as to go into. You got information that you can go on. So your game plan is a platform where students can go on and learn from themselves for free. So there's something called Introduction to Accountancy that's sponsored by one company. You've got Introduction to Entrepreneurship, which is sponsored by a different company. The idea being that company's not talking about themselves. They are just giving a fair and unbiased view of what their industry is like. Because, like you said, what you don't want to do is BAE Systems go, oh, we're the best thing in the world, to impressionable young children. And they go, oh, well, I really want to work for them. That's great, but you need to have a completely fair and unbiased. The companies, we've got 7 companies at the moment that are going to be sponsoring these introductions. And the good thing is they all agree we would rather put the work in just to have our name, our logo on the course as an introduction to accountancy without ever selling to the students, so that they have an understanding of what accountancy is like. And we don't really mind if we're not directly selling them our jobs. We just know it's going to be better for our industry as a whole if we can teach 20,000 students what a career in accountancy is like. So that's where it becomes a lot more fair. So
let's say, so do you think a university degree is more desirable to an employer than not?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
What do you think? I mean, tell us your genuine opinion.
I mean, yes, overall. And that's because that's been what the rhetoric has been for years and years and years. If you all you have to do is go on Indeed and type in a job, developer or accountant or most things, right? And you'll see that requires a minimum of a 2-1 from a red brick university. But I've never understood that. And I think that the problem that companies are going to have to start understanding is, or the challenge they're going to have to start overcoming is, you're not necessarily going to get a better class of employee by looking at a degree. I speak to heads of graduate programs all the time now, and they say to me, well, I won't name which company it was, but he said to me, look, I've got 100 people here with a 2-1 with a similar degree from a similar university. It doesn't make them stand out anymore. So that's where companies, I believe, are going to start getting to the point where, hiring people at the apprentice age, where they can start training them in what they need to do at a much earlier age, is going to be more beneficial. And I think you're going to see that percentage that we talked about, the 76% of university, 9% apprentice and 6% jobs. I think you're going to start to see a shift in that, because if the more and more people see that a degree doesn't necessarily guarantee you a role, And the more and more we can educate teachers and educate students that it's not necessarily the best path to go down, the more you're going to start seeing people go into apprenticeship and school leaver programs. And as a result, the more you're going to start seeing companies have less of an onus on people needing careers. Now, this is not going to happen tomorrow, right? This is not something that we're going to be able to solve in the next day or two. This is going to take 5 to 10 years at the very least to start seeing a big change here. But it is a change that needs to happen, because you've got students who are coming out of university in a ton of debt, with less prospects than they thought they were going to have, all because they were told that was the right thing to do. So not only are they doing, they've got to a situation where they were told that this was the right route to go down by their parents, their teachers, their guardians, their career advisors, but they're in a situation where they feel like a little bit sort of, screwed over, right? What I was told that this is what I need to do. This is the route that I was told, if I go down here, I'm going to be successful. And then, like you said, they've got to start again. And that's where I see most of the anger and frustration from the graduate students that I speak to comes from.
Do you think that they should just outlaw degrees that aren't going to get you a job? Like, because it's ultimately, a bit. It's just like a show, isn't it? It's like, we'll come and study, David Beckham's right ankle. You can actually study David Beckham in a university in LA.
I heard that. Yeah.
Come and study David Beckham, but what are you going to do? You're just going to study David Beckham and hope to get a job with him. There's limited talent pool there. There's limited opportunity. So do you?
It's become a business, though, hasn't it? University. That's the problem.
Yeah. So it isn't one way to outlaw degrees that just have a very minute prospect of getting a job when you leave.
So outlaw is probably too strong of a word, but policy change certainly is. So
Kim Jong-un is coming out over there.
Yeah.
Outlaw the degrees. No education.
But you're right about the policy change side of things.
Ultimately,
ultimately, you do have to get to the point where there's policy change for anything to change across the schools, because most of the schools and universities operate around particular policy that's been enabled, even to things like university fee caps and that sort of thing. So ultimately, it does need to be policy change that changes things. But to get to the point where you can have policy change, someone has to go out there and show what can be done and what that transition could look like. And
I think you'd be a good education minister, Neil. I think I'm listening to you. And I'm like, you know what? You'd get my vote. I tell you what, you should become an MP, sir.
Well, I mean, if anyone's got his number, I've got a couple of things I'd like to discuss around this. If anyone knows the education minister, I'd love to have a chat. But he doesn't pick up the phone when I call. No, I haven't. No, like I said, there's no point trying to change policy until you've got something proven that's going to work. You need to have this have worked in a number of different areas and have a proven record of going and having this influence on teachers, schools, and having a support structure before you can go to affect policy. But yeah, I'll take the job if you offer it.
Well, it's not my decision, but if it was, you'd get it. I also there's another thing that I was just thinking just now. What about if they didn't outlaw the degrees, or for each degree you need every year to have X amount of placements with X amount of companies each year, so obviously not everyone's going to get a job, but the best, say top 5 of that year's course, they go and get placements into an organization. If it's music course, it's you go and work for Rock Nation or Live Nation or whatever they're called. If it's a business course, you go and work for Accenture. It could be down to the industries, but surely there should be, and it could be quite achievable to allocate each year slots into employment, right? If the top graduates or the top performing. What do you think?
Well, that's happened, I think, at the moment. I think there is that happening across certain companies. If you look at, especially from university and graduate age, if you look at, I don't want to name companies directly here, but if you look at some of the top four consultancies, or the big four, I should say, they will primarily, some of them will primarily hire from whoever got an internship, and that internship is primarily from what they did at university and the connections that they made at university. So it's very, I think it's something like, in one of them, it's 80% of people who get the graduate roles were previously an intern at some point for their business. And that can be, let me, one of the most fascinating things, and I got some notes on it here, one of the most fascinating things that I found out about the school side of work experience, because we talk a lot about internships at university, and they're very, very powerful, very, very useful. And like I said, for some companies, that is pretty much the only way to get a graduate role there. But there's a lot of some things they do at school with it. So they do a work experience week in year 10 at schools these days. And it varies between schools.
I did that. Did you do that?
I didn't know. But so this was the point. What school, what did you do for your work experience week?
Well, so I went and worked in a gearbox factory.
Yeah.
And it was actually brilliant. But I didn't do it in the week. I did it during the summer. So it was 2 weeks of work experience. And I went to work in this gearbox factory because my mum was cleaning the house of the geezer who ran the company. And
this is my point, right? So most people's first experience of the working world is this work experience week. And schools don't find the work experience for you.
Well, let me tell you what happened, yeah?
Yeah, go on.
Let me tell you what happened. And this is no reflection, if any students are listening, this is no reflection of what could happen to you at all. Anyway, so I'm there, and it was a factory. It was fantastic. And the guy used to call me Steve. One of the guys was looking after me. And they used to probably take the piss out of me. But I used to take the piss out of them as well. It was great. Do you know what I mean? It was but anyway, my last day, they wrapped me up in duct tape, put me on a forklift in a box, and then put me up to the top of the bloody racks.
And left you
Imagine that for HR bloody lawsuit. You know what I mean? I didn't sue them. Don't worry, and I won't name any names. But that was invaluable to my life experience.
I bet. No, but this is yeah, you couldn't get away with that now, could you? But this is the thing that I find really fascinating, right? So you've got this first experience of the working world. Most students will only do a workplace will get work experience or get a workplace job unless their parent or their friend knows someone, right? Yeah. So if you don't get one for that 10 days, then you go back to school. You work in school for 10 days. So imagine this, right? The very first experience that some students have of the working world is, well, if my parents didn't know someone, then I don't get a job. That's the very first experience that some students get of the working world. It's, well, if my parents don't know someone, then I'm not going to be sorted out. And that's just emulated across the years, right? And that's, again, through the support structure is what we're trying to solve. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, let's hope that no one gets the experience I had. Well, I did.
I mean, you turned out all right, didn't you?
I turned out all right, exactly. No, but I really actually did enjoy working there. But I just thought it was great getting your hands dirty and whatnot and cleaning, like gearboxes. Brilliant. Range Rover gearboxes, actually.
Very
anyway,
good.
So very good. Very good. That's good. So where do you think that the biggest challenge that students are going to face down the line, whether you are a graduate or you are a school leaver? What's the biggest challenge in getting a position? Is it the education of what types of opportunities out there? Is it that I have the skills, like I have those professional skills, or they could have those professional skills? Do I have the soft skills? Why should employers hire you just because you're a school leaver?
Yeah. So look, it's more about your if you are a student, let's say, some advice to students who are hopefully listening to this today. The best advice I can give is to start your networking as early as possible. So you can't rely on, like that example I just gave, you can't rely on, there are going to be people that you're up against whose parents know someone or brother knows someone. That's never going to change. There's nothing that can be done about that. So the best advice I can give to students right now, at whatever age, I'm working with a 15 and 16-year-old at the moment who've created a LinkedIn profile to start networking on LinkedIn, right? And I'm not saying that you, as parents who are listening to this, that you should start, making your kids at 15 and 16 do this. They did that of their own volition. But certainly, the moment that you turn 18 or thinking about going to university, or even a couple of years before that, start building out a list and network of companies and industries that you want to work for. Right now, there isn't a support structure for you to understand what it's like to work in engineering, what it's like to work in tech or hospitality. So you need to be figuring out those things on your own. And by going out and being very open and honest with individuals, it can be through LinkedIn. That's the most powerful thing at the moment to use. But going out and having a conversation with individuals, asking about different industries, that's how you're going to start building up a really powerful network of people that's going to help you when you do graduate or when you leave school. Now, I'll give you an example. I'm working with a young woman at the moment. She is currently a estate agent, so she didn't go to university, went straight into an estate agency, and she really wanted to do something in fashion, right? But she was very good at selling houses, very good as well. I think it was rent. She was the rental side of estate agency. But she wanted to work in fashion, right? And she was stuck. She'd been trying to do this for 2 years. And I said, the only way that you're going to be able to do this is if you go directly speak to people who are currently working in the fashion industry, not asking for them for a job, just saying, look, I think I'm really good at selling. I think I've got a really good personality for that sort of thing. I'd love to work in the fashion industry. Could you tell me where you think I might fit in? I'm not asking for a job. I'm just asking for advice. She ended up having an interview with ASOS 2 weeks later as for a fashion buyer role, right? Which is a lot of the sales side of things. So the main advice I would give to students out there right now who are struggling, who are just sending applications out, is that it isn't a completely oversaturated market in terms of wanting to graduates applying for roles. There was a 12.7% decrease in the amount of graduate roles in 2020. That only went up by 3% last year. It's only gone up by, well, I don't actually have the stats for this year, but I can't imagine it's back up to where it was anywhere near when it was pre-pandemic. So the only way to differentiate yourself from the rest of that market is by going out and networking through the different people that you want to speak to. And this really applies to really applies to people who are unsure about what they want to do. So I speak to students all the time who come to me and they say, Neil, can we do some coaching? I don't know what I want to do. And I go, right, okay, well, what ideas do you have? Well, I think I want to work in something to do with engineering, or I want to work with my hands, or I want to do something like that. Okay, well, I'm not the best person to tell you which job you should go for. The people doing those jobs are. So if you can reach out and say, look, I'm not asking for a job. I'm just asking for 15 minutes of your advice. Could you give me some advice on what it's really like to work as a fashion buyer at ASOS? Because I don't really know where I'd fit in within this business, but I know I want to work in the fashion industry. You're going to get much higher response rate on LinkedIn from people if you're doing that sort of outreach. And that's what I'd be doing if I was a student who's a little bit unsure. Hopefully, over the next couple of years, what I'm doing with your game plan and ECA will have a really, really good support structure that's there, a platform where you can go and engage directly with online free courses to help understand the different industries and then which companies are within them. But for now, that's the best route for you, I think.
Can you still hear me all right?
Oh, you're still there, Antonio? I'll keep talking. So, yeah, and the best way of doing that is just by going on and creating a list of 20 companies that you think you would like to work for, or even, a list of 4 different industries, for example. And if you've got that list of 4 different industries ready, then you look up, maybe 5 of the top companies in that industry, and then 5 wild cards, 5 companies in that industry that you think might be relevant, but you're not sure, and then just start doing that outreach. And the most important thing to remember here is don't outreach to HR necessarily. You want to reach out to people who are doing the job that you want to do, and that's where most people make the mistake. So if you're looking to get a graduate financial analyst role somewhere, they're the people you want to reach out to in that business to find out more about what that role is like. Not the CEO, not the person who's running that program. And there's also no one else in the world who knows better about how to get a graduate role at JP Morgan as an analyst than someone who's currently doing a graduate role at JP Morgan as an analyst, because they've physically done that in the last year. I saw you cut off there for a bit, so I kept on talking.
Yeah, no, it's good. The thing is, I can actually hear you. It's interesting. I can hear you, but it's just you can't hear me. Anyway, I really like that, because you don't. And also another thing is that people don't really need. You don't need to be fully great to start. Do you know what I mean? You don't need to be fully there. Companies, unless it's really a high important role, or like an important role at the with that requires experience. The companies are looking for people that are self-starters.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or just join the recruitment industry. If in doubt.
Or do what we did and join the recruitment industry, which is why everyone does.
There's that old saying, isn't it? If in doubt on what you want to do in life, get into recruitment.
Just join the recruitment industry. Yeah, that old phrase from the early 1900s. Yeah. No, but the one thing I will say about this though is, like, if you are struggling to figure out what you want to do, then there's no, go and start reaching out to people. On
But
LinkedIn.
also another thing is, if you're struggling to know what you want to do and you don't know right now, but don't hang around at home sitting around playing Xbox. Do you know what I mean? Or smoking weed and playing Xbox. Yeah, I'm talking to a lot of my Luton brethrens over there. Don't be sitting around doing that. Actually go and do something. And I think that because the life experience of doing something, whether it's a retail job or joining the recruitment industry, there's plenty of jobs in the recruitment industry where you can actually work in engineering. Say you want to become an engineer, you can work in engineering as a recruiter, really get to know everyone, can build up your chops, and then go and do it yourself or go and apply for a job.
It's that proactivity you spoke about, right? So I see on a lot of people's CVs, they say I'm a proactive, organized person with a good work ethic, and they don't know that. You've just written some words on a piece of paper, right? I could write I'm the fastest 100-meter sprinter in the world on my CV. It wouldn't make it true. I'd have to go and run the 100 meters the fastest. So what you need to do is show these attributes rather than tell people these attributes. And the very act of reaching out to someone on LinkedIn or 10 people in a business asking for advice, you're already more active than 90% of people. Doing a LinkedIn post makes you more active than 99% of people and your peers. So if you can show that proactivity, sorry, you're going to talk about posts, but it's showing rather than telling, right? Yeah,
of course. Well, one way to go viral on LinkedIn if you're a student looking for a job is to go stand in Canary Wharf with your CV on a print out.
Works all the time.
Works all the time. You get 19,000 likes on LinkedIn. You'll get a job in 2 days easily.
Yeah. I wouldn't. How many people does this podcast go out to? Because it's not going to work if there's 100 people there on Monday.
It would be like Hyde Park on a Sunday, wouldn't it? Everyone on the soapbox.
Antonio told me this would work.
There's loads of people there.
To make Antonio is right to an extent with that. It is important to make yourself stand out, right? And little things like being proactive. So here's another great example of this. So there's a great guy called Dominic Joyce who is he works at Klarna. He's one of their recruitment individuals at Klarna. He talks about this all the time. He says, this is his phrase, not mine. You need to be like a peacock amongst chickens, right? You've got to make yourself stand out from the crowd. And he says he gets about 100 people a day reaching out to him on LinkedIn who are students saying, hey, I'm looking for a job. Here's my CV. Do you have anything for me? And he says, and it's all about the reciprocity or the reciprocation of effort, right? If they've clearly just copy and pasted a message to me, why would I put the effort into responding to them if they didn't put the effort into reaching out to me? If he says, if I get a personalized video through saying, hey, Dominic, the reason I'm reaching out is I'm just looking for a bit of advice on my career. I think Klarna would be a good place to work, but I'm not sure if it's going to be right for me or not, or if I'm going to be good enough. Could you spare 10 minutes to tell me more about the jobs that are there? He's going to respond to that because someone's put the effort in. If you can put even a little bit more effort in and say something to the effect of, Hey, Dominic, I saw that Klarna just won an award last week. Congratulations on getting the Best Recruitment Industry Award for 2022. The reason I'm reaching out is I'm a little bit confused about what to do with my career at the moment. Could you spare 15 minutes to give me some advice? Then he's definitely going to respond to that. And just to think about it yourself, I mean, how many times you get a video message on LinkedIn? Now, and it all becomes about the more effort you put in, the more effort you're going to get out. And people think that there's quick wins here. In the same way that they thought a degree would be an easy way to get a role, it's so much more work than that past getting that degree. And again, the thing that annoys me the most, and you say, why am I passionate about this, is because their parents and teachers and friends told them that from the age of 14. That was what was going to happen. So you can't blame people in that situation. It's just about how to get them out of it now. Yeah,
but there is a level of entitlement, amongst the younger generation. I'm not generalizing. I am generalizing somewhat, but I'm not generalizing, in general. If that makes sense.
Not at all. No,
but I think there is. I'm just going to fucking say it. I think there's a bit of a sense of entitlement. Why are we having a shortage of hospitality workers when we have enough school leavers? Why are we having a shortage of retail workers when we have enough school leavers and we have enough university leavers? But the job is beneath them. You know, I worked in retail, loved it, worked in hairdressing, loved it, worked in hospitality, loved it, taught me a lot about life, taught me a lot about people. And actually I earned really good tips in hospitality, so you can make good money if you want to go out in a session on a Tuesday night. Do you know what I mean? Just saying.
That was general as well, right? Not specific to you, that last bit.
But what I'm saying to you is that there is a sense of, I mean, if you were to do a study, people don't want to say it isn't a sense of entitlement, but there is a sense of entitlement. If you were to do a study, you would find that people would say, a lot of school leavers, or and this is just me anecdotally speaking. So, and someone prove me wrong. If you prove me wrong, fantastic. But I think there's a lot of entitlement. I think sometimes you need to dig deep. You need to do the dirty work before you can do the good work. In my opinion. Just say
again.
Huh? Oh fuck. You there?
I don't know if you can hear me, but I can't hear you. I hope this isn't just both of our internets today.
Right. Come on.
Oh, interesting.
This is terrible. Terrible Wi-Fi.
Are you still there, Antonio?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me? Hello.
We can hear you both.
So, for people who are still listening, I think just from that, if it is from a student perspective, then that's important. One of the things you can do as a parent or as a corporation or business at the moment. Are you back?
Yes. So what did I say? I said I end on. I think you need. This is terrible Wi-Fi connection today. I'm absolutely shocked with it. Sorry about this, Neil. But don't worry. It's still a great podcast. It's been great content. As I was saying, I think you have to do the dirty work before you do the good work, and some people need to get. And I think you need to get that in your head as well. You can't just go straight into $100,000 a year salary before proving yourself. Do you know what I mean? But that being said, we have people on the call who want to ask some questions, I believe. Raise your hand if you want to ask some questions.
Great.
And we've got a load of them, which is great. So we have a gentleman by the name of Kevin Childs here.
Never heard of him.
Never heard of him. Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, really great podcast. Really great to sit and listen. The question I'd put to you, Neil, is technology is advancing really quickly. How can tech like metaverse help people know what it's like to work at places? And is that something that's on the horizon anywhere?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I do have, in the second half of this year, plans to investigate the both VR and AR side of how we can help with that support structure, introduction to industries, and clarity side of things with regards to industries, job roles, and what careers could be like. I don't think the technology is quite there yet to spend more time on it than doing this in the second half of this year. The more engaging you can be to students and the more engaging you can be through technology to students, the better. At the moment, that typically stands at engaging them on where they are. And the majority of students are on TikTok, if you're talking about the younger generation, and the majority of slightly older generation are on Instagram. So that's where we're going to do it. That's where the main focus has to be if you want to start appealing, changing minds, and changing and sort of showing opportunities and giving clarity. It has to be on where students are. Is there an opportunity down the line to engage with things like the metaverse through VR and AR? Absolutely. But there needs to be a much higher uptick, a much higher engagement level before it's worth going down that route, I think.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Boom. Thanks, Kevin. Let's go to Meg next.
Hi, Neil. Hi, Antonio. Just want to say thank you. I found today really hugely interesting. I've wanted to jump in so many times, which tells you how much I've enjoyed it. I think because of young people I know, but also I've been reflecting a lot on my own personal journey. I am qualified by experience, and I've had huge success in my career. But yeah, I had quite a few moments of nostalgia. I was thinking about what you were talking about earlier about when we were at school many years ago, and the dreaded National Record of Achievement, that red book that nobody ever really completed. And I think what you talked about with, I don't think it's best placed with schools and teachers really to help people decide what they're doing with their careers. I think particularly with career teachers, when it really is their vocation as well. I grew up with two parents who were teachers, wider family that were teachers. And when they've only ever worked in that teaching environment, the recruitment process and their application is quite a niche experience, and they don't really understand what the recruitment process in the kind of working world really is. So that they're not best placed to advise. But I I don't want to hijack the podcast. There's so much I could say about what's been spoken about, but I've got a few questions. One is, I think what you're delivering is fantastic. I think it's great that you're giving young people the opportunity to learn and understand their options. I'm just wondering, a few questions. Do you envisage there being an element of government funding with what you're doing alongside the corporate funding that you're already securing? And also, do you have a strategy for how you can showcase other sectors where they may have a lack of funding to support this kind of activity, such as the charity sector, and they haven't got the budget? And also, I just wondered as well, what level of support do you offer to students who decide to progress with companies they learn about at your events?
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks so much for that and all the questions. So, with regards to the second question about charities, yes, we're actually working with 19 registered charities already across the UK in various different forms. There is going to be opportunities for those third sector companies to come in and support. Remind me of the first question, sorry, Meg.
I was wondering whether or not there's you envisage there being an element of government funding alongside.
Funding, yeah. So yes, absolutely. So that's our end goal is the government funding. It's just it's a longer goal that we're hoping to achieve, because ultimately we need to show this as a proof of concept that what we're doing is actually going to positively affect the outcomes of unemployment and the outcomes of local hiring in SMEs in different geographies and demographics across the UK before we can go, could you you can see the good work we're doing. If you funded us, we could spread this across the entirety of the country and do some incredible work across all the schools. But yes, but we want to make sure that we've got a proven model that we can go to the government with first before we start doing that. So that's sort of our aim over the next year or two. Yeah. And sorry, your last question again?
Yeah, that's great and makes sense. What level of support do you offer the students who decide to progress if they decide to sort of approach the companies that they've actually met at your event?
Yeah, so we do this in a couple of different ways. So there's a couple of different events that we do. One's called Side Hustle. Think about Side Hustle as like Dragon's Den, but for students, where they can go in and they can give sort of business ideas and come up with an actual business plan, working in collaboration with some of the businesses that are sponsoring, who then have direct access to those businesses and can speak to the businesses' recruitment teams. The one that's going to be most beneficial for students with this is we're doing three different learning hubs. So we're doing a digital learning hub, a financial learning hub, and a well-being learning hub. The digital learning hub is going to be something that's, again, all of this is going to be free to students. So something that's free to students, where they can go and learn about different technology languages, do a programming course. That's all going to be across four-month cohorts twice a year. That's going to be sponsored by a number of different companies in the digital field. The idea being at the end of each of those 4 months, so they get a free sponsored introduction to programming, introduction to technology, introduction to the entire industry. That all goes on across 4 months for free, that they can do in their spare time, just 20 minutes a week. And then afterwards, there's going to be an event where every business that's sponsoring that will talk directly to all of those students about the specific roles that are going to be available and how to apply for those roles over the next couple of years of their career.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Neil. If any of the students were lucky enough to sort of be progressed to recruitment with one of the companies, would you offer them some kind of interview coaching?
Yes. So we actually have all of that on the website already. So we've got interview coaching, we've got career planning, a lot of free different sort of courses on there outside of things like introduction to industry. So alongside introduction to industry, we have introduction to career planning, introduction to interviews, and lots of different other free sort of courses that they can go through, which we call sort of life skills. So other things in there as well. Let me just get the list up now so I can briefly go through them, because it's a really, really good question. It's a really good question around this. So bear with me 1 second while the website loads. So you said you come from a family of teachers. Is that what's your opinion on sort of the support that you see at the moment in terms of what's going on?
Well, like I say, my experience particularly, they weren't the best placed people to help you through that process, sort of beyond school. And like you say, the focus very much is on education, as it should be when you're in that environment. And I certainly, I mean, it was a long time ago now, and it's a very different world in terms of the landscape, and finding out information is at the touch of a button these days. But it was certainly I felt it quite difficult to navigate that. You know, I think I went to National Careers Service or something, had a conversation when I was about 17, and I left there thinking I'm joining the army. I didn't join the army.
I've heard that from so many people. Yeah.
So,
My dad was telling me the same thing. He went, well, you might as well join the army.
yeah, they were like, oh, you're a trumpet player. You could be in the band, in the Navy or something, you know. So I was like, right, I'm going to go into the armed forces. And of course, that wasn't a good fit for me.
And unfortunately, it's not got much better, has it? That's the trouble. So yeah, in terms of courses, we have 5 different sections at the moment. On top of the digital hub, financial hub, and wellbeing hub, we've got behaviors for the workplace, skills for the workplace, improving your mental health and lifestyle, the introduction to industries that I've spoken about at length, career planning, and then application and interview. So for example, you could go into one of these, again, all completely free on the platform, and there's courses on constructive feedback, conflict in the workplace, how to handle criticism at work, all the things that basically to prepare a student and prepare a child for the working world. And then for application and interview, for example, we've got things like interviewing skills and how to write an effective CV. So the idea is we're going to build this up to a point where this is just a one place where you can get both introduction to industries, understanding of different, and gaining clarity on what careers are really going to be like from an unbiased source, and then have everything from workplace skills, getting people ready for the workplace, to how to effectively interview.
I think that's all fantastic, Neil, and I'll certainly be sending the young people I know in your direction.
Fantastic. Sounds good. Thank you very much for your questions.
Brilliant. Thanks, Meg. And then we have another question, Neil. I know we're on the deadline, but
I've got time. No worries.
We've got a good question for you. So, Justine, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah. I really like the podcast and the discussion because I was also an undergraduate before I was able to get my degree. So I have 2 questions. How can school leavers, based on your perspective, what advices can you give to school leavers for them to be more employable? And what advices can you give to graduates for them to actually improve their employability given the tough competition right now in the market?
What fantastic questions. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Fantastic question. Thank you very much. So first of all, not to, self-advertise too much, but one of the best things school leavers can do is to sign up to your game plan, which is completely free, and go through all those free courses that will help you with your employability. There's just so much free content on there that's completely professionally done by a media company, and every single course on there is CPD qualified, right? So it's an official course. It's been qualified by the Education Standards Authority in the UK. So it's a great place to go and learn for free and up your employability. The other thing that I would do is I would take Antonia's advice from earlier. If you're a school leaver, I would go and be proactive, right? One of the questions that I've heard the most from people when they're trying to get a job after the pandemic is, so what did you do during lockdown? And if the answer was not much, I sat around and did nothing, you're much less likely to be employed. And that applies not just to when we've got a pandemic and we're all stuck inside on a lockdown. That applies to everything that you're doing. So if you're a school leaver, if you're in school, you need to start building up some relationships. Obviously, you want to focus on your A levels, you want to focus on your GCSEs. That needs to be your main focus to get those good grades. But in between that, 20 minutes a week doing some learning on your game plan, or going out and starting to build up a network, or just asking through friends, family, people you may know, going to local shops, going to local SMEs, asking about what their careers are like. I guarantee that there's 1,000 different businesses within 25 miles of every single school leaver who's potentially listening to this right now. If there'll be an accountancy, there'll be a tech firm, albeit, depending on where you are in the country, it might be a small tech firm, but there will be one, right? And there'll be different industries, different companies that you can go and directly speak to. If you go and knock on that door and you go and say, hey, look, I'm leaving school at the age of in a month's time. Could you tell me a little bit about whether you have school leaver programs or what the industry is like? They're going to take that because you're probably the only person who's done that for the last 6 months, right? So be proactive is the best advice I can give to school leavers. Now, when we're talking about graduates, what advice would I give to graduates? Well, that's a slightly different story. You need to be starting this as early as possible. From the very first year that you're in university, you need to make sure that you have started doing your outreach, that you have started making connections. One of the things, 80% of the people that come through the Early Career Academy get jobs through LinkedIn networking, not through applications. And the reason for that is because there's still such a saturation in the market of graduates who are looking for roles. A lot of people who are getting those roles are well, I've put so and so at the top of the list, or could you get my friend a job? Now, that's not the case. It's not the case all the time. But the more that you have a connection to that business, for example, I've done an internship at that business. The more work that you can do that shows you're proactive, and the more networking you can do, the much higher chance it is that you're actually going to secure a position. And I would, like I said before, I would start with people who've got the job that you're looking to do. So if you want to be, I don't know, a Java developer in a tech firm, go and speak to a Java developer who works at Spotify, for example. I don't know if they use a Java tech stack, but go and speak to a Java developer or graduate analyst that works at Spotify, and add them on LinkedIn. You're only going to get about 20% of people come back to you. Create a personalized video and say, hey, thanks for accepting my connection request. The reason I'm reaching out is I'm thinking about, I'm just about to leave university, or I'm leaving university in a year's time. Spotify is on the top of the list of companies I want to work for. Could you spare 5 to 10 minutes of your time to tell me a little bit about what it's like to really work at Spotify? And by the way, congratulations on getting your job there. I'd love to hear about how you beat out the rest of the competition. And consistently do that. Add 5 people a day on your LinkedIn. So 5 people a day, every single day, and consistently build that up over the space of time that you have. If you've just left university, you can still do that, right? It's just going to take you a little bit longer. So the earlier that you start with that network building, the better.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Helpful.
Good stuff. Any other questions, Antonia? Or Justine, any other questions?
No more questions. I think I certainly believe in building networks.
Well, if you want to, if anyone wants to, I'd give out free 15-minute chats to anyone who wants them. So if anyone wants a free 15-minute coaching advice on their career, it's just www.eca.careers. Scroll down to the bottom. You can book me in my calendar anytime you want. And again, completely free, no obligation to that. We've done, I think, 300 free 15-minute chats in the last year. And yeah, if you want some personal one-to-one advice, then please feel free to jump on and book that in.
Boom, boom, boom.
Right. Nice.
Thank you, Justine. Appreciate that. So, Neil, that brings us to a close. What were your thoughts on the podcast today?
Do you know, this is the first time I've been publicly speaking about your game plan and what we're doing.
You've done a fantastic job.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And, you know, it's just fascinating because I've just been really, you know, absolutely absorbing myself in this world and speaking to teachers and speaking to students and trying to speak to as many businesses as possible. And it's good to see that there is real, you know, real synergy, you know. And I think one of the things that's really bringing everyone together on this is, yeah, we all felt the same when we were children. We had no idea what to do and there was no one to tell us, you know, there was no support structure at all. So it's really good to see that. And thank you so much for having me on. I really, really appreciate it.
Absolutely, mate. Really great to catch up, and let's catch up in the pub soon. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll see you in London.
Anyone who would like to connect with Neil or would like to have that free 15-minute chat or would like to just find out about anything Neil does, his link on his profile is down below, and links to your game plan and also the ECA down below. Subscribe if you're on YouTube, follow if you're on Spotify, and if you're on LinkedIn, then head over to Spotify and YouTube to do the following things: subscribe or follow. Look, love it, Neil. Absolutely fantastic to have you. You take care. Have a great day. And I'll see you in the pub soon.